So welcome to the sixth and finale of our webinar series on financial well-being. We've had a journey. We've covered many topics and I have introduced you to the experts, but of course the experts will all be here today as your panel experts, and we would encourage you to be asking questions throughout. Robert, our manager of the chat box today, will introduce himself shortly. If you feel more comfortable with emailing Robert the personal question, please do so using your chat box. Please tick Robert Treadwell, which is R Treadwell, and he will pick those up anonymously. So a little bit about myself. My name's Carla. I'm sure most have seen me and some have met me before. We've hugged and we look forward to that day again soon. So I'm an OD consultant for Arden and Gem, which is a commissioning support unit. And really what that means is that we are commissioned by healthcare organisations to support them in their, not only their well-being, but learning delivery and other organisation development sort of tools and resourcing. So basically what we do is we analyse and brainstorm, and we challenge you to be the best that you can be, but also we offer those support and tools and resources to organisations to help them support you the best that you can be and to support them in their performance as an organisation. I could take the next slide, Nate. Thank you. So most will have seen our wellbeing support model. This is what we put together at the beginning of COVID-19 to offer you support in a virtual delivery. Of course, before we hit COVID-19, most of these were done face-to-face. There's been some challenges, and I'm pretty sure most of you will agree that the way forward is a blended approach. Some things we will deliver virtual still, and some things we will deliver face-to-face when the timing is right. If you wish to utilise this model for your thinkings and your thoughts for your own wellbeing programmes, please do so. You also have the national support offers, which are fantastic offers. You'll also have your local wellbeing offers, which I'm sure are just as fantastic. But if there is anything that we can help you with, please do email myself or the email at the bottom of the slides, and we will do what we can to support you. Today, you'll see we are concentrating on the financial wellbeing element. So financial will and probably does link to a lot of other elements of your wellbeing, such as mental health or your career, your socialisation, etc. But today we are going to talk for you for the final time about financial wellbeing. Next slide, please. So I'm going to introduce you firstly to Robert, who's managing the chat box today. So Robert, are you okay?
I certainly am. Hello everybody, my name's Robert Treadwell. I'm OD business partner. I am part of the OD consultancy for Arden and Gem. And as Carla said, I'll be looking after the chat box. So thank you to Rachel for putting the first question in. So use the chat box freely today, and I'll pick up as many questions as I can and put them to the expert panel after the presentation. So please use the chat box. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. So our expert, or our first expert, who's going to give you a quick run through is Martin. You'll see Martin and Neil on the screen on the slide in front of you, and Martin will explain.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Super, super. Well, hello, my name's Martin Harvey. I'm the head of financial planning at Total Wealth Planning. I'm also a chartered financial planner like Neil is. Unfortunately, Neil can't be with us today, so it's my job to take you through 2 or 3 slides, really, his highlights and his favourite slides, and also give you a couple of top tips when financial planning. Next slide, please. So the first slide we've got here is the change curve and behavioural finance. Really interesting slide. What it depicts to me is the human condition. Now, we'll be on this lifestyle roller coaster multiple times throughout our lives, but clearly there's been a number of changes very recently that have led to people experiencing furloughing or redundancy, or indeed bereavement. So there is a real link between how we manage this change curve and also our mental well-being. So what this slide is really telling us is the acceptance part of this cycle is so very key. It's asking us to face our problems, to take control of them. Because by taking control, realistically what we're doing is we're doing something about them. And that's only going to improve our mental well-being and also our financial well-being as well. So it's all very inexplicably linked. Now, the really important part is not to try and take on too much at once. So it's a marathon and not a sprint. So deal with these things one at a time rather than all at the same time. Could I have the next slide, please? Super. So one of Neil's favourite slides, and certainly one of my favourite slides, is the cornerstone of financial planning. Absolutely key in financial planning. I talk to my clients about this on a daily basis. It's exploring a relationship between the stuff that you really need to pay for, your core expenditure, food in your mouths, the roofs over your head, and also what you want to spend, i.e. your discretionary expenditure. These are things like entertainment, these are things like holidays. Understanding this relationship between what's coming in and what's going out is really very, very important, not just now, but also in the future, because you need to have an idea on what that lifestyle that you're looking to provide for yourself and your family in the future when you retire costs. So understanding this relationship between core and discretionary expenditure. Are you using your finite resource? And your finite resource is your income. Are you using it wisely? Are you using it sensibly? Really interrogate it. And Carla's provided some terrific budget planners and expenditure planners. So do take advantage of those. That leads us quite nicely into the next slide, please, which is the need to plan. You know, what lifestyle do you want? Well, why would you plan? The reason you'd have a really robust financial plan is to be prepared and not be surprised. Now, life, family, work, finance will throw many different events at you over the course of your lifetime. If you have a robust financial plan in place, then you are prepared for these events. You've got contingencies, you've got strategies, and all of that is really, really good. Now, the sooner you create your plan, the better it will be, because you'll have longer to work at it. The longer that you work at it, the better chance of success you will ultimately have. And that's very, very important when you're creating a financial plan. So a very quick summary of my top three tips is address things early, take control, use resources that are available to you. Obviously, the whole suite of what you'll be talking about a little bit later on and what Arden and Gem provide for you is second to none. Also look for resources outside as well. External resources, people like myself, people like Rebecca, who you'll hear from in a minute. Use as many of those people to get you through to that acceptance stage and then move on, because it's all upwards from then. The third thing, my second top tip is income expenditure. Know your numbers. It's so very important to really understand your relationship between your finite income and what's going out. Is it in the right balance? Challenge yourselves on that. And my third top tip, get a plan together. By putting a plan together, you're really going to have a much better chance of success and understanding exactly what it is you want to achieve within your life, for your family, for your work, for your finances. Okay. So I'll stop there and I'll pass back to David and Carla.
Thanks, Martin, and a useful recap. And I've just put into the chat box, everybody, the webinars that Neil originally delivered for us, which was the general overview of your financial well-being, which was your income expenditure. He also touched on your pensions, retirement, retire and return, and whether lump sums were the best thing for you. So please, any questions you've got going around in your minds, please put in the chat box and we'll direct those to Martin later. So our next expert who delivered webinar 3 was Rebecca. Hi, Rebecca.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Hi, yes, we can hear you. We can see you. I'll hand over to you, Rebecca, for your quick recap on your webinar.
Fantastic. Thank you. So I'm Rebecca, founder of estate 20th of February, I presented the Legacy and Estate Planning webinar to really raise awareness of some really important key issues facing so many people, and based on my 17 years experience of helping people as an estate planner. So the kind of things that we covered on the webinar were things like avoiding paying unnecessary tax. We see a lot of people now with second properties and have capital gains tax implications that they're completely unaware of. So what we want to do is help raise awareness and highlight those kind of issues for people that possibly do have second properties, maybe inherited, or they've purchased property to supplement retirement planning and help them avoid paying unnecessary tax. But also we focus on inheritance tax as well. Really, really big focus for estate planning, helping people legitimately avoid a voluntary tax and ensure that their money is passed down their generational line to the people that they want. We also looked at gifting property and money as well. Really, really big area. We see lots and lots of people trying to mitigate a potential problem, but unfortunately create other problems in the meantime by doing that. So it is possible to give property, and we're here to help you make sure that you pass it on in the right way and not find yourself in a situation whereby you think you're solving one problem but actually create another as well. And we also focused on wills. So what happens if you don't have one? The government has a free standard will for you. For anyone that's got a really old or out-of-date will as well, we focused on what happens in that situation, and mirror wills as well, which are really, really common and popular, and we see many, many mirror wills. And the implications, actually, what happens if you do have a mirror will, and how you can own a property as well, and the combination of the two things together. So we focus on tenancy in common versus jointly owned property and the impact of mirror wills, with a view that we wanted to raise awareness on the risks of disinheriting family and children through unintended consequences, which we see increasingly. And we also looked at lasting powers of attorney as well. Lasting powers of attorney is really, really a real hot topic for us. We see a lot of people now going down the DIY route. And just to let you know that last year alone, we saw 22,000 applications rejected by the Office of the Public Guardian. So we just wanted to raise awareness on the importance of having a lasting power of attorney and what happens if you don't, and unfortunately dealing with the court of protection and all the associated costs and complications of doing that. And we also had 5 great top tips as well, things that you can do, really simple things that you can take away. And Martin's touched on some of them there in terms of recording details, working out your income and expenditure, but also if you are on second properties, if you are thinking about selling or gifting any properties, and recording those details as well. And that covers the webinar. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you, Rebecca. I hope that was useful, and Rebecca will be with us for the whole of the session today. So please put your questions in the chat box or direct them to Robert, and Rebecca will be on hand later to answer those questions. So our 4th webinar was for those who are eye owners and who may have received a letter for annual allowances. And this was delivered by our colleague, Duncan. So Duncan, would you like to introduce yourself with a quick overview?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Just as a sort of quick read.
Okay, I'll just double check with Duncan. We seem to have lost connection. If we would. So Martin, would you like to offer anything on our 5th webinar that we did with salary sacrifice, investment and savings? Just while I check with Duncan with his connection.
Certainly can. This webinar was really important. Again, it comes across with the theme of just knowing what's available to you and making very, very sensible decisions on ultimately what is available to you. Information gathering on what your scheme provider will provide, what the NHS provides, and other external sources as well is ultimately very, very important. And it will allow you to make the right sorts of decisions about certainly things like salary sacrifice, which could have wider ranging implications. So anything that you're considering that will ultimately involve that sort of transaction going on, then do get it checked out first. Make sure you do that research and make sure it's in line with ultimately what you want to do and what you're sacrificing because of it.
Thanks very much, Martin. We have lost contact with Duncan, unfortunately. I will take a call with Duncan shortly. So I guess he will be here for the end, hopefully, fingers crossed. But any questions that you have as a high earner, whether you've received a letter or any sort of complex situations you find yourself in, please do put the questions in the chat box. And if Duncan is unable to join us, we will make sure that you get the answer to your questions. Okay, so they were our 5 webinars. Today is obviously about coaching, and Dr. David Matthew, if I could introduce you to him now, will deliver this session for you throughout the rest of this session. So hi, David.
Hi, Carla. Can I just check my sound is clear?
Absolutely, thank you.
Carla, thank you very much. Good afternoon, colleagues. I'm David Matthew, OD consultant with Arden and Jem, colleague of Carla's. And Carla's asked if I can just talk to you briefly about the subject, or on the subject of coaching as it applies to financial well-being. So that's what we'll do right now. Let's move on to the next slide. So this would be ordinarily my opening slide: coaching skills and financial awareness. I'm not here particularly to advise you on specifics about finance. You have your experts on hand, and you've heard from 3 of them. Well, you've heard from 2 of them today. The third hopefully will join us a little bit later on. Financial acumen is not my background, but coaching skills is my background. And so hopefully to introduce you to a couple of tips and pointers about coaching and how it applies to your financial well-being. What is coaching? I'm going to give you some ideas here. Coaching enables people to perform better by building on their current knowledge. It's about facilitating performance. It's not necessarily giving you any answers, and that's the important part of what I would hope to get across to you in the next 15 minutes. Coaching is a way of helping you, not necessarily teaching you. You are not trying to teach a person when coaching. It's about their abilities to unlock their own performance and maximize that performance. Bear with me, colleagues. I'm just going to close this box. Sorry, that's better. So what is coaching? Coaching is also a style of management, as it says here, in which the manager encourages people to reach their full potential by encouraging self-belief and self-development. It's this self-belief which gives people the drive to achieve their potential and gives them the means to learn new and different skills to maximize their own strengths. Please mark the distinction between this, what's on your screen, and teaching a skill. If you are new to the idea of coaching, please, if you take away nothing else, take away this message. Coaching is a reciprocated and communal activity. Both parties are involved in the dynamic. Whereas teaching, you could argue both parties are certainly involved in the dynamic, but the power is different. It's a different style of engagement. Coaching is a process designed to enable people to learn and develop and ultimately improve through their greater competence and confidence. Important. This is what coaching is not. Coaching is not about training, counseling, consulting, or mentoring. Elements of these 4 subjects or concepts will actually be from time to time, will be part of coaching and the relationship, but it's not necessarily about those skills. Otherwise, we'd call them by those names. Coaching is a different dynamic. Coaching, its purpose is not to give people the skills to complete the tasks or to address personal issues. It's not about being an expert and providing all the answers to your coachee. It's not about being a guide or facilitating a person's personal growth. Not necessarily. You're working together with this. It's not doing something for someone. It involves a mutual agreement to partner with someone to improve the performance. Hopefully, we're looking at an environment, when you're looking at coaching, the environment where you support and challenge. And the emphasis is on both of those, support and challenge. If you can see on the left, support goes from low to high at the bottom axis, challenge goes from low to high. Now, only you as a coachee, the one being coached, will know where you are in that 4 possible segments. And of course, even within a given week, you might move from one to the other. Inside a given day, you might move from one to the other. But I ask you now, colleagues, just to put yourself in one of those spaces right at this moment, today. Where are you in a work environment? Do you feel comfortable? Now, if you feel comfortable in your work, chances are you have some decent or better support. Chances are your challenges are not too high yet. You're comfortable. Now, that's not to say that's the best place to be, but that's where you are possibly right this minute. And we all need comfort in our work environment. To the right of that, are you safe, where your support is high, but also your challenge is high? You feel safe. You can go about your work, go about your tasks and duties, but without feeling threatened. There's a lot of challenge, but you also get a lot of support. Point here is the coach can help you find your place within this, within one of these segments, most of, if not all of the time. Take those and oppose them with the 2 on the bottom. So if your challenge is low and your support is also low, it's a good chance that you will feel apathetic. The environment around you will also feel apathetic. And we know that environments influence mood, and in turn mood influences others' mood, and in turn others' mood influences the environment. It's all connected. Apathy, working in an element of apathy, an environment of apathy, is ultimately very, very poor productivity will ensue, as you might imagine. If no one really cares much about it, then really not much will get done for on a long-term basis anyway. Contrast that in turn with the 4th possible segment, and that's where your challenge is very high, but your support is low. That is where you enter the environment of stress. Now, that could be stress for you individually on a personal level, a stress that develops in a workplace and ends up in a domestic setting, or develops in a domestic setting and gets taken into the workplace. Either way, we cannot divorce our lives from one another. We're not one person working, one person domestically. Unless you are incredibly disciplined, it's a good chance that you will merge your 2 selves, and possibly more selves, but at least 2 selves. So the coach will help you work through where you are in this particular dynamic, where you are, which segment you are most, if not all of the time, and you will discuss ways to move between segments if that's what you feel is the right way to go forward. But it's crucial that you would at least get some support to learn where you are in this coaching environment. The coach will support you and challenge you, and it's up to you working with a coach to find out how best to make the next step. At this point, I introduce you to Grow. Now, if you Google or type into any search engine, coaching models, coaching strategies, coaching styles, you will see many, many results. I've had to choose one for the purposes of today. I've chosen Grow. There are many others, but this is a good opening gambit when you're talking about coaching. It's called Grow. It asks, what do you want? That sounds like a really obvious question, but if you're approaching a coach with a view to self-development of some description, it's a good place to start with. What do you want? What do you hope to get out of this relationship? And what do you want more long-term than the coaching relationship? What are your goals? What are your aims? What are your ambitions? Crucially, what do you want? Not as easy, I would argue, to answer as you might immediately think. What do you want? What do I want right now? Well, that's fairly simple. You can satisfy immediate needs. What do you want on a more long-term, sustained basis? That's a trickier question to answer. That's your goal. That's the G of Grow. What you actually want. What is happening now? Now, if I asked just about everyone in this audience this afternoon, what is happening now? I am willing to bet the answer would revolve in one way or another around a pandemic. Pretty much everyone's working relationship has been influenced, changed, curtailed, postponed, or in some way influenced by the COVID-19 pandemic and our response to it nationwide. However, if I say what is happening now on a more general basis, what is going on in your life? What is developing? What is not developing? These are the types of questions that a coach might ask, or indeed you might ask if you happen to be a coach yourself. What is happening now? This is your reality. This is the R of grow. What is the real influences on you, and what are the things that you are influencing? What is happening? What's developing in your life, or as I say, not developing in your life? The third question any coach might ask is, what could you do? Realistically, what could you do? And this is looking at your options. So this is the O of grow. What could you do? What are your choices? Where might you go? What are the different paths you might take? And the fourth question a coach might ask, coaching in general, but also, of course, because we're talking about financial well-being, what will you do? If you put the financial lens onto any of these, what do you want? What is happening now? What could you do? What will you do? They're coaching questions, but here we're specifically referring to financial well-being. So what will you do to help yourself financially, to improve your financial well-being? This is your way forward. W, way forward. What will you do? Note, please, the coach is not giving answers. Quite the opposite. The coach is asking questions, helping the coachee to find something, possibly already known but not articulated, or possibly up to a point co-created with the coach. But crucially, not a teacher, pupil, or educator-student relationship. It's a coaching environment is not the same as teaching or training, as we've mentioned already. So this is your goal. So going back to the G of grow, your goal is where you agree the topic for your discussion. It's where you agree a specific objective, your reality. Invite a self-assessment. As I say, you've got to be honest here with yourself. Martin mentioned earlier on about addressing your concerns, addressing the concerns you have on a financial basis. And Neil, in a previous webinar, said something. He was asked a question, what about, I asked him the question based on a question that had come in. What about if you're terrified of facing your financial reality? I forget the exact words, but that was pretty much the message. What if you're terrified? And Neil said something I thought quite profound. He said, well, the fact that you've acknowledged it is a first step. It's a fantastic first step. You might still be terrified, but you have at least done something about it rather than ignoring it. So here, a coach might say something similar. You invite the self-assessment, and the invitation here is to be very honest with yourself. Even if you're not pleased with where you are right now, even if there is room for your own financial well-being development, nevertheless, you have been asked, and therefore you will ask yourself, what is going on? So here the coach might offer some specific observations or some feedback, but crucially, the coachee is there to talk and to sort of, as I say, discover things, possibly co-create, possibly discover things that he or she hadn't yet articulated. Avoid and check assumptions. Don't assume anything, check. If you have made some sort of guesses, then you might just check they are the right ones. This is what a coach will do, or should do, a good coach. Coach might also ask, what have you already tried? Possibly, what have you tried? What did not work? Or what have you tried in the past? What worked for you in the past? These are the kinds of questions a coach might pose. Which carries on. What have you had some success with? What was happening prior to this? And so on. What changed? This is getting the background for the bigger picture. This is where the coachee will be able to find out some self-truths, quite possibly. We move on to options. If you remember, the O of grow was all about your choices, your options. So here, the invitation will be to suggest something. Make some suggestions. I stress again, we're not teaching. Offering suggestions is not the same thing. It's for the other person, the coachee, to absorb, to reject, to say maybe, to say definitely not, to discuss, in other words. Encourage creativity in the responses, to make observations, to make suggestions where needed. And the W of your grow model, the wrap up, otherwise known as way forward, otherwise known as where to next. The W has various interpretations, and I've used two today. Wrap up, way forward, where to next. They're all connected. Next steps might be to get your commitment to action, to identify those obstacles and make your next steps specific with the coachee. And in turn, the coachee must make the next steps specific with the coach. As I say, reciprocal. You're going to agree some sort of follow-up actions, whatever they might be. That's impossible to suggest right here without knowing the context of the actual conversation, of course. But the wrap-up is very important. So these are some of the questions that a coach might be interested in posing. On the left, you'll see questions that are connected to the problem itself. On the right, questions connected to a potential solution for that problem. Note the difference, please, between what is the problem and what would you like to achieve from this session? Now, they're both addressing the same issue, but they are posed in a different way. On the left, addressing what the issue is. On the right, addressing a potential way forward. And similarly, what's the difference here between what is hindering you or what is stopping you? What is the barrier, and what progress have you made so far? Please mark the distinction between the two tones. Similarly, why is this an issue for you? As opposed to, what would it mean to achieve success? And so on. How long have you been experiencing difficulties? As opposed to, when in the past have you achieved a positive outcome? Colleagues, I'm sure you can mark the difference between the two tones of voice. That's not to say that problem-focused questions are wrong, not at all. Sometimes they have a vital part in getting faster to the nub of the problem itself. But there is another way. That's the point being made here. Problem-focused questions, solutions-focused questions will both be deployed by the coach, but most coaches will probably use more of the questions on the right. Which brings us to the feedback and the way forward. Next steps potentially, or possibly the concluding steps. What worked well? What didn't work so well? What did you find particularly powerful? What did you find difficult? What could you do differently? Sorry, I've missed a word out. What could you do differently going forward? There should be a do there. And so on and so forth. These are questions a coach equally might pause, which takes me to the end of my part of this afternoon's webinar. I've kept to time, and I'm delighted to say. And at this point, I hand you back to Carla.
Thanks, very useful. And I'm sure there's lots of people thinking about how Grow can help them at the moment. What I would just like to say is Duncan sent his apologies, but he's back online. So I would like to offer Duncan the opportunity just to do a very quick recap on his webinar, which was webinar number 4. Are you with us, Duncan? And hopefully so.
Yes, I am. Thank you. Sorry. My machine decided to give me the lovely Windows blue screen of death, so apologies about that, but I am now back with you. Yeah, it was just a quick recap on the high earners. There's sort of three key to-dos that came out of that. The first two are very much specific to those that are high earners or that may be high earners in the future. But the third one is actually applicable to anybody working for the NHS, or for that matter, anybody working anywhere in the public sector. So the first of those to-dos was to go back and look at your most recent P60. Excuse me. On that P60, one of the things it will tell you, and I think if I remember rightly from looking at NHS payslips, it's usually down in the bottom right-hand corner, is it will tell you what your total taxable income is. Now, when you look at that, if you then add on any other forms of taxable income that you might have, whether that be rental income, dividends, interest, so on and so forth, and if that total number for, if you like, for the next set of declarations that are required around annual allowance is more than £110,000, then you need to get in contact with NHS Pensions and ask them for an annual allowance usage statement for the 1920 tax year. And the reason for that is because you may be subject to annual allowance tapering. So that's top tip number one. The second tip would be, when you're speaking to NHS Pensions, ask them for a projection of what your likely retirement benefits will be at the age that you think you want to retire at. And then once you get that projection back for them, look at the total income that you might well receive and multiply that number of income, multiply it by 20, and then add on the tax-free cash that you will potentially get from the pension. If that total number is now more than about £1.1 million, then you will potentially need to get some additional assistance or find out some further information about the lifetime allowance and to understand whether you may have a problem with the lifetime allowance. Now, the third tip relates to absolutely everybody that works for the NHS, and that is that if you ever do receive a letter from NHS Pensions, or if you work in other public sector bodies, a letter from those pensions, public body sector, pension sectors, if you ever receive a letter from them talking about the annual allowance, the pensions annual allowance, and saying that you may have exceeded this, please do not ignore this. Do not do what we've heard many people have done and just file it in a drawer and forget about it. What that letter is telling you is that you may have a tax charge to pay. Not necessarily that you will, but that you may. And at that point, if you do receive one of those letters, I would strongly suggest speaking to an expert, getting some additional help, making sure that you understand, do you actually have an annual allowance tax charge to pay, or actually, after all, maybe do you not? And that would be my 3 top tips from that, just to try to keep it simple and just to try and keep what is a very complex area as simple for people to understand, so that they can understand when they do need to worry about these things. And that's all from me. So thank you very much, Carla, and apologies again for the computer issues.
Don't you worry at all, Duncan. I'm sure you'll stay with us as well if there's some questions at the end for you. So we'll take you back to the presentation. What I would just like to offer you is the opportunity to understand and be aware of all of the top tips that our experts have given us over these last few weeks. So what we've done is we've put them all together in a lovely document for you. So this is a PDF that we will send round at the end of the presentation or the webinar today. But these have been offered by experts. So please do use it as a tick list, use it as a tool or a resource to help you with your financial well-being, particularly during COVID-19, but also thereafter. Your finances are with you forever. Eulogy have been very good. They will offer you a one-to-one telephone call. We will put all of that information into the chat box. And also, as an organisation and the experts, we've put together some top tips of our own. They're on the next slide, please, David. And these will go along your income and your expenditures that Neil talked to us a little bit in the webinar last week, on your salary sacrifices, on your investments, your savings, NHS discounts, really getting the most of your pay slip, but more so your income, because don't forget, some of us have income in addition to our pay slip. And of course, there's the household income also to look at. So we've put these tips here together to reduce your outgoings. And on the next slide, we have put some tips together to hopefully help you understand how a budget works and how in addition to David's great presentation today on how you can coach yourself. Again, we will send these through to you afterwards. If you feel as an organisation we can support you or your teams, please do get in touch with us. The information is there. But at this point, I'd like to hand over to Robert to take some of the questions from the chat room, please. So, are you with us?
Yeah, thank you very much, Carla. And thank you, David, and the panel for your input. That's been really, really interesting and useful. I've had a few questions in, and I think the first one around coaching is, are there internal or external courses that you can recommend to gain experience in coaching?
Oh, there are many different coaching courses available on the internet. Some will concentrate on the GROW model that I've introduced you to today. Some will concentrate on other models, the HOW model, the T-GROW model, the model. There are different models, and some providers will have their own preference. I personally like the GROW model. I think it's nice and clear. GROW is an easy word to remember as well, so you can sort of remember the bits of it quite quickly. And I mean, as a coach or as a coachee. But to answer your question about providers, there are any number of different providers, NHS specific and wider field providers of coaching courses. They vary in value quite a bit. I suppose I would add, as with many things, you kind of get what you pay for. If you can afford, as an organization, well, I suppose go for the one you can best afford. I suppose that's the best answer I can give, given the context of where we are talking about finances. We're also talking about organizational finances. I'm quite happy to continue the conversation, but NHS itself will provide coaching qualifications through the various programs, starting with the Mary C. Cole upwards. A lot of those will have attachments to coaching models as well.
I think that someone's pointed out the Leadership Academy do run quite a lot of coaching support in terms of short term, longer term, but there are plenty of others. So if anybody's got a particular desire to follow up on coaching, then get in touch with us and we can signpost you. We'd be pleased to hear from you. Here's a question that's just come in. My mum is working for the NHS and is due to retire in the next 3 weeks. She's always paid tax on her income. She's received a letter from the HMRC saying she owes tax. How do I investigate if this is correct?
So in terms of our experts, who would like to answer this on terms of retirement and possibly linking into pensions, I think?
Happy to take this one.
Martin.
Yeah.
Thanks, Martin.
Okay.
Not at all. It's really important. The government have got what we call a government gateway that you can sign up to. This is where you can get things like pension forecasts. You can look at what tax you've paid over different years as well. So that's a really good place to start to actually understand, have I paid the right amount of tax, or have I paid? Now, it very much depends on the letter from HMRC saying what sort of tax and why. So a good place to start would be to look at the government gateway, the understanding of what that letter actually says and what tax they're asking you to pay. And then either take advice from a professional, someone like myself or someone like an accountant, to investigate that for you, or you can challenge straight back to HMRC, call them directly and say, can you explain this to me? So government gateway, challenge HMRC, and if you need further clarification, come to an expert financial planner or accountant.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Now this one I think might be for you, Rebecca. In terms of the COVID situation that we find ourselves in, what would you suggest in terms of estate planning and thinking ahead?
Okay, so probably with this one, just making sure the basics are there. So if there is a will, or will is a great thing to have. It's a great way to record your wishes, your instructions if you're not here. So if you've not got a will, absolutely look to making a will and look to the right sources to be able to do that. And of course, do research there. Someone like myself can help, but again, accredited people in the industry could be there to advise and guide you on that. Also, if you have an old will, detail, we've got a free will review service here, and it's really helpful to a lot of people. So we can review the contents of your existing will in line with your current situation, so your financial situation, your estate and your family, and see whether or not that still fits with what you've got. And if it doesn't fit, of course, then we can look at what options might need to be put in place, or steps that need to be taken to address any concerns or any out-of-date features. For example, executors might have died, family fallouts are a big one as well. So getting hold of any existing documentation is always our starting point. And also really important, a lasting power of attorney is a great thing to have in place. In the event of being ill and ending up in hospital, what it will do is it will provide you and the people around you with legal protection. So if you're not able to make decisions for yourself, and do the things that you would normally do day to day, deal with your banking, your finances, deal with health issues as well, so really big decisions about life support and treatment, all of those really big key issues facing people right now. Power of attorney will allow the people that you trust and that you've appointed as your trusted attorneys to step in and make those decisions for you, and ultimately it will mean that there'll be no disruption to your normal course of life. So absolutely foundations there. So review an old existing will. If there's no will, seek advice on arranging a will and a lasting power of attorney. Things beyond that, like trust and protection of assets for children and grandchildren for generations, are absolutely all part of that. But just having those basic foundations in there, really key.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Rebecca, I'm just wondering if you could give a little bit of thought to coaching in this context and how you think it might help in terms of the questions that you ask yourself, or actually getting a coach. Do you think that would help?
I certainly think, coaching in the context of estate planning and thinking about the kind of things that are important to you and the kind of things that you need to address. Is that what you mean?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, absolutely important. So working out what's important, working out the important people, the important things that you want to address in your life, and evaluating all of that, absolutely. I think that can certainly be a really valuable tool and part of that, for sure.
Gives you that focus and hopefully that impetus to get it sorted, because I think that's the sort of thing that a lot of us put off. Okay, thank you. I've got a question around working from home that is particularly topical. So I wonder if somebody could answer the question, please. Could we claim any tax back when working from home?
This probably could be me as well.
Okay, Martin, please do, yeah.
So I don't, unfortunately, have any solid answers for you right now. What I do have and have received in the last couple of days from an accountant connection is an understanding of what you can claim for, and also how to do it. There is a specific form. I can't remember the name right now, but it will be in that email. So what I propose is that I take that away and come back with a more sensible instruction that you can or Carla can send out from a wider perspective. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd just like to add that with networks with NHS employers, they are working with the HMRC, and yes, you can claim tax back, but it's an individual approach, not an organisation approach. But you can claim on things like uniforms, which you've always been able to do from an agile working perspective. But there's also now, I think it's £6 per month they're allowing you tax-free, just to help bump up your income slightly. But Neil kindly shared us a document on agile working, so we will send that afterwards. And perhaps Duncan, so Martin will have a conversation and put something together so we can follow that through. But very good question, because I'm sure lots of us are working from.
Yeah, very pertinent question, because another one that came in was there an allowance for working from home? Slightly broader question. Anything to add to that?
Nothing to add apart from there is some guidance. So when we get the answer to that question, that will be included.
Someone suggested a P87 form might be the one to look at for the revenue.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Somebody's in the know there, so well done. Any other questions? You can pop into the chat box now. We've got a few minutes left. I've got an interesting question that's come in, and this is to the whole panel. Have you got any examples of how coaching might help in understanding how financially healthy I am?
I'd have to look for examples of that specifically. But there are many available case studies about as a means to improve one's financial well-being. Whether or not I'd have to look specifically for a case study that addresses that criterion exactly, about how financially. What was the phrase you used? Sorry, financially what was it?
How financially healthy I am.
Your financial health. I mean, that does suggest a positive, at least. Someone's talking about financial health. That's recognizing, it would seem to me, I interpret it as understand that you're doing pretty well financially. So I suppose the coaching there would be to help understand next steps, perhaps, rather than what I do to improve a situation, what I do to maintain an already healthy situation. If I've read that wrong, colleague, I apologise, but I think I'm right in saying that. In terms of a case study, I'm sure we could find one, but I would have to look.
Okay, thank you, David.
I think from my perspective also, it's probably about what do you feel healthy looks like? What is it you want from life? So I guess that grey model is the starting point. But perhaps, there's one more question that's come in. Perhaps if we take that one question.
Take that last question, shall we?
We'll direct to top tips.
Yeah, if someone has left a will, what's the first thing to do, Rebecca?
Unfortunately, we see this in a lot of cases. So 30% of people that actually pass away, unfortunately, no one knows where the will is. It's an increasing issue. So really important to establish, is there a will? There's not really any database to check. So it really is a matter of really ascertaining. So going through all of the records and being absolutely sure that there absolutely is no will, or there's no records of anything. And unfortunately, if someone does, if there's no evidence of a will anywhere, it means that that person has died intestate, which means that the government's will kicks in, the intestacy rules kick in, which stipulate who gets what and when. It's quite a complex set of rules. Certainly something that I'd be happy to take offline and have a chat with somebody about. There are always options, but it's just really ascertaining the facts at this point in time. So being absolutely sure of the current situation and going from there. But the intestacy rules are pretty clear in terms of who gets what and when. So yeah, more than happy to help with that one offline if that helps. Okay,
lovely. Thank you very much. I think that's all the questions that we've got time for this session. As Carla's pointed out, one-to-ones are available, and I'm sure she'll just outline how to go about that. But one of the things that I'm struck with around coaching is around what questions you're holding. And this isn't the only opportunity to think about those questions. So I'll hand back to Carla to see how you might take that forward if you've still got questions and you haven't asked them. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Robert. There's some really, really good questions there. So I wanted really just to sort of end the series with the support that we have offered. So you can go back and you can listen to these recordings over and over again. And as we sort of stipulated, Eulogy, which is the experts groups here, have offered one-to-one telephone calls. So please do have a conversation with them. It isn't costing you anything, but it would be your first step, I guess, into that grow model. So it's just about understanding where you are right now so that you can assess where you might want to be in the future. I guess from my perspective as the wellbeing lead here, we've focused very much on financial wellbeing, and I do hope it's been useful for you. It is part of the holistic approach to you as an individual, but also to the support from an organisation. If there is anything we can help you with, please do email us. If there is anything that you feel that you would like us to deliver in the future, again, please do email us, and we'd love your feedback on the financial focus. To give you an idea of what's coming next that we're working on, we are working on some financial workshops which will help you to take a bit more of a deeper dive into things like understanding your mortgage, understanding your savings, what are the social pressures around your financial well-being, and I guess what sort of personality do you have? What is your financial personality when it comes to spending? Is it because of peers? Is it because of keeping up with the Joneses? Or are you quite savvy and you're quite happy to have an own brand rather than a luxury brand? But I guess it's about understanding everything you are doing where you are exchanging cash, either as a virtual means with the new contactless, or whether it's handing paper and coins over as we did in the old days. So that's it from us in financial wellbeing. We will say please stay in touch. We are working on other webinars to do with mental health. We are offering staff MOTs, and that's a one-to-one conversation with an expert through a 15-minute personal conversation. And we are also working with the flu vaccines to deliver those. But we don't need to mention anything more about flu or vaccines. So just a quick recap. Please email myself or David or Robert at agem.od@nhs.net if we can support you with anything at all to do with your well-being, your coaching, for example. And please contact Rebecca, Duncan, Martin and Neil at info@eulogy.co.uk, and they'll offer you that one-to-one conversation to help you and your household with your finances. So on that note, I'd like to say goodbye. And if our experts are also happy to say their goodbye.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Goodbye to you all. Stay well, stay safe, be kind to each other.
Thanks today.
Cheerio.
Thanks, Robert. Thank you very much, Martin. And Rebecca and Duncan.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Duncan. And to everybody who's joined us for taking the time to have a wellbeing lunch, please continue to do so. And that ends the webinar series for today. Thank you.